You're watching the NWR Investor Conferences. It is November 2020. On the line, we have ikeGPS Group. IKE is seen in the market as one of the only ways to play the 5G and fiber optic rollout in the US, which is one of the megatrends over the next 5 to 7 years, we're hearing. Glenn Milnes is the Managing Director and CEO. Glenn is accountable for the company's overall strategy, performance, and growth. Glenn joined IKE following more than a decade of leadership roles at organisations including International Communications Group, Cable and Wireless International, London, where he oversaw a group of more than 30 fixed and wireless businesses, and Number 8 Ventures as well. Over to you, Glenn, for your presentation.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks everyone for joining the IKE overview. So I'll just quickly pulse through who we are, what we do, how we make money, and the markets we're serving, and then open up for some questions towards the end. So fundamentally, we address two key segments in the North American marketplace. So the first is supporting the communications market. We dramatically speed up the process to deploy either a 5G network or a fiber network. Really interesting market tailwinds. We're about year 2 of a 7-year boom in terms of this market, with more than $350 billion being invested into fiber and 5G network deployments. And our value proposition here is our technology platform dramatically speeds up the deployment process. The second market that we address is the electric utility industry across North America. More than 3,200 electric utilities make up this marketplace. And they're typically the people that own the power poles. So the photograph here is an overloaded power pole, but you can see the very high number of other services that attach to power poles. So all the communications companies, TV, cable, etc. So the utilities taking a 10 or 15-year view of our business is where we see the even larger market opportunity. These folk are interested with getting it right, keeping the power on, not having failures, and our platform lets utilities design their network and deploy their network in a higher quality and more standardized way. Just the third piece to the addressable market for IKE, we also sell to there's a market of around 1,000 engineering companies that do work on behalf of the communications companies or on behalf of the electric utilities. So they're the third prong in terms of addressable market. We're 100% focused on the North American marketplace because of those big macro market tailwinds. In terms of what we do and how we make money from a platform perspective, so there are two parts to our business model. One, our customers subscribe to use our platform, so they pay an annual subscription in advance, and that gives them access to our field tools, our workflow software, and the ability to use our cloud-based software system. The second part of our business model is we have a cloud platform. Our customers send us raw data from the field, and we process that information and send them back engineering deliverables. And I'll give you some examples of some of the reports and what our software looks like in practice. But we charge a transaction fee. So on top of the subscription revenue, there's a transaction fee for the assets or power poles that we process through our system. And as I mentioned, I'll show you with some pictures what our products actually look like in practice to follow. In terms of why customers buy IKE and why we're winning the customers that we are, there are some key metrics, and these are our customers' metrics, productivity metrics, not ours. For the communications market, it's that yellow box. We speed up the engineering process for network deployment by about 2 times. So communications companies, fiber companies are interested in getting to market as fast as they can, getting their networks stood up, attached to power poles so they can win their underlying customers. That's our key value proposition. For the electric utilities, they're also interested in some other things, particularly around data quality and reducing costs. So we dramatically reduce the number of truck rolls or revisits to assets, and we take a lot of cost out of the back office, so up to 75% of headcount by using technology to replace people or the old way of doing things. And we are now working with some of the biggest names in the industry across the US market. So on the communication side, Crown Castle have standardized on IKE for their fiber and 5G network development. We work with AT&T, Verizon, some of the biggest names on the communication side. And we also have all of the investor-owned utilities on the west coast of the US as customers, and a handful of some of the other very large East Coast investor-owned utility groups. So we're still early in this marketplace in terms of where we are in penetration and growth across existing accounts, but we are working now with many of the largest tier 1 players. In terms of financial performance and momentum in the business, the chart on the left that here shows revenue, gross margin, and operating cash flow, which is the green line. I think the more interesting chart for investors is the one on the right. So this chart here represents revenue from that core communications and utility segment. The blue piece represents recurring revenue. So this is revenue coming from transaction and subscription sources, and that's been trending in the right direction, and we expect that to continue to grow, both in terms of percentage and absolute levels. From a team perspective, we're a highly specialized business, and our platform addresses challenges with building networks, distribution networks on power poles, and we consequently recruit very specialized people with knowledge of our markets and our customers. And just highlighting a couple of directors for this presentation. Some of you might be familiar with Bill Morris. So Bill was recently CEO of NBN in Australia, and prior to that was CEO of Vodafone Australia. He's currently a senior executive at AT&T, reports to the board of AT&T, and they're the world's largest communications company. So very much at the sharp end of understanding the problem that we solve around fiber and 5G network development. And prior to that, Bill's an American. He's based in San Francisco. He was CEO of Pacific Gas and Electric, one of the big investor-owned utilities, and CEO of Vodafone Europe. So he's got a real deep experience across our customers and markets. He's very hands-on with IKE, and someone we're delighted to have working alongside us. And we recently appointed Mark Ratcliffe to the board. So Mark was most recently the CEO of Chorus, which deployed New Zealand's national fiber network. So again, a real voice of the customer advocate for us, and again really understands the problems that our products solve in the industry. And more broadly, from a team perspective, again, we hire and recruit very specialized people that understand networks and network development. So we're headquartered in Colorado in the United States. That's our center of gravity, and we also have a software engineering office in Wellington, New Zealand, but Colorado is our nexus of operation. So just to provide some examples of what our technology platform is and what it looks like. So we talked about these detailed reports and engineering deliverables that we send back to customers. This is what our platform looks like, and this is what it does. So here is looking into our cloud-based software system. You can see here a photograph of a distribution asset, a power pole. So an engineer's taken a photograph using our tools in the field, and it's synced into our cloud-based system, and then our software is able to measure and position and annotate all of the components and attachments on that particular power pole, and understand who owns what and where everything is attached. That's important because it flows through into design software. So this is our pole foreman design product or structural analysis product. So it takes that verifiable photograph of an asset and turns it into a digital model. And this is used to understand, how do we engineer the pole so that we can attach a 5G antenna or a fiber line, etc., and do it in a way that meets engineering standards of the utility that owns the pole and also meets regulatory standards. These players will face a great deal of risk, legal risk and regulatory risk for having a failure causing the next fire, or going out next time a hurricane blows through. So it's all about speed, but it's also about the quality of the information that our platform provides. And we provide these really large infrastructure companies with a way to see what's happening across their network at a micro level, all the way up to a macro level. So you can see here a view of some AT&T projects that are happening across the country. So they get a cross-country view, and they can also drill down right down to a single engineer in the field to see how productive or what the productivity rates are at an individual basis. So a top-down view. We also have workflow software to control the way that engineering teams operate and making sure they're as efficient as possible in the field and in the build process. So we standardize the way that these companies can think about using engineers in the field. And this report's a little bit hard to see, I apologize, but it ultimately rolls up into things like a permit request. So we replace manual permit applications and use software to automate the permitting process. And this reduces a lot of errors. It also means that the utility can trust the information that they're getting from an attacher, a communications company, and therefore permit requests happen at a much higher success rate. So just to conclude around some recent updates across the IKE business, our performance, we looked at financial performance, but we had record outcomes in terms of the key metrics for FY20. We operate in the USA, which has been impacted by COVID. We're deemed to be an essential business in terms of COVID rules and regulations because we support critical infrastructure. So where our customers had a slowdown through the March, April, May period, we're actually seeing our market has really come back to full operating status. Networks are being prioritized in terms of build out, and we're able to continue to serve our customers notwithstanding COVID impacts. We've made a range of recent announcements. So through Q1 FY21, since the period to June, we announced the largest shared communications infrastructure company in the US is standardized on the IKE platform. So we're in the process at the moment of deploying internally to this business, and through the latter part of this financial year, we'll be rolling out to their more than 300 engineering companies that serve this group. In Q2, so the period to September, we closed a $18.5 million capital raise that included bringing on some great new Australian funds onto our register, and the use of funds for the capital raise is around expanding our operation, particularly our delivery operation. We serve very, very large customers as a reasonably small business, and we are also continuing to assess new acquisition opportunities. From a momentum perspective, we've seen our markets come back quite strongly. So through Q2, we closed new contracts of around $3 million. So that's back up above the run rate levels of FY20. And then through the month of October, we've recently announced a major utility group. They're a Fortune 100 company that manage a range of large electric utilities. But we're completing a phase 1 $250,000 pole project that will generate around $750,000 in revenue this financial year. And we hope has an opportunity to lead to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 projects across this very large group. So with that, I'll pause there and open up to any questions.
Thanks, Glenn. Quite a few questions for you this morning. We'll try and get through them all. So once growth is established in North America, are there any long-term intentions to look at other large utility markets, such as Europe or anywhere in Southeast Asia?
Yes, there are, and we have some interesting inbound opportunities from the Asian market, but the more focus we've got, the better we've performed and delivered, and we think the market opportunity is so vast in North America that's really where we're exclusively focused on at the moment. Our business model, we sell directly and we deliver directly into these groups, so having a presence in market for us is an important factor also.
Yeah, Glenn, on that, can you talk about the size of the addressable market and what market share your existing customers would actually cover?
Yeah, in terms of those two market segments, the electric utility market opportunity is vast. So we assess that market as being a $750 million per annum market opportunity from a top-down perspective. So electric utilities are required to assess, audit, and do design projects or network hardening projects on an annual basis. It just recurs, so that's a very constant requirement from that industry. And the communications segment, from a bottoms-up perspective, we assess just the top 10 communications companies as representing around a $250 million revenue opportunity for IKE over the coming 3 to 5 years. And we've focused very hard on selling into those tier 1 communications groups. We have product or sales inside 12 of the largest 15 of these companies at the moment at different stages. But we're very early in terms of our penetration and growing across these customers once we're inside them. But the groups that we have on the comms side represent a large chunk of what's happening with fiber and 5G network build-outs.
So it sounds like that the sales are largely greenfield in nature. Is that correct, or are you also replacing competitors or displacing competitors, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're replacing the traditional way of doing this work, which is relatively manual in terms of the process. And it's harder than it sounds to replace manual work processes, because it's what these groups have been doing for decades in many cases. So, introducing technology and trying to dramatically alter some of these workflows is it's a huge opportunity, but it's also sometimes challenging to get folk to change a big part of how they do network development.
Who are the biggest competitors, if you wouldn't mind answering that question?
We as I say, we typically replace manual work processes, and so there are some large engineering companies in particular that have specific ways of doing some of this network design work, and we are typically replacing those. Or in the case of a Crown Castle, for example, they have an established engineering model at the moment. Again, it's very manual, and we're in the process of changing the way that they do that.
More of a technical question here. Do you carry any of the risk of pole failure with your rollouts there?
No, we don't. So we facilitate a power company or a communications company getting to a submission for a design, but we're not responsible for the engineering stamp that goes on to the build itself. So we don't have liability in that respect.
So everyone seems quite excited about your growth prospects, Glenn. People want to know how many employees are in the organisation right now, and when do you foresee that this will grow as part of the cap raise?
So we're growing the team at the moment. So we have around 50 FTEs, and we have a contract team in India of around 20 folk. So we're small relative to the size of these businesses that we serve, and we're investing at the moment, and particularly in delivery capability. So account managers, support staff, etc., that make sure we keep our customers on track.
You mentioned acquisitions quite a bit in this Q&A and also while you're presenting. What type of businesses would you consider acquiring?
Yeah, so for us, once we are embedded in a customer, we're looking to deliver as much value and extract as much value through pricing for transactions. So we're interested in modules or software capability that lets us do more in terms of reporting around building a power pole or maintaining or analyzing power poles and power pole networks. So we're looking at, we're really interested in the ability to analyze and manage large data sets, very large data sets. And it's a horribly overused term, but there are some artificial intelligence, machine learning based businesses or capabilities that we think are really interesting that we can apply specifically to this power pole problem.
Yeah, thinking about the wider application of your services, are there opportunities to apply IKE to renewable energy infrastructure like distributed solar or wind turbine and battery installations? Is there any other asset other than power poles?
Yes, potentially, but for us, it comes back to focus, and we think this market opportunity is so immense that we're really focused on excellence around distribution poles at this time, because the problem set is so large, and the level of the market timing in particular around power poles in North America is optimal for us and our solution at the moment.
Glenn, we've had a question just come through. If you can give some more details around the big infra conference that's coming up.
In terms of its focus, or
yeah, I suppose it's focus. I think that's what the person has asked. Yeah, they just confirmed that.
Yes, look, I think these types of conferences are interesting for us. Our message, there are very specific personas and people inside these companies that we sell to and we're seeking to influence. So we have a presence at some key industry events. Distributech is the biggest one for us globally, which is focused on distribution assets, very North American centric. And some of the communications conferences, we don't have a focused presence at these more general type events, because we find we can't necessarily touch the right persona within our target market. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that does help. Everything helps. So we've also had one just come through about your recent infrastructure contract. If you could provide some more details on that, just for some more context.
Yeah. So look, the context with this customer, when we acquired the PoleForeman business about a year ago, and this is PoleForeman has a really impressive customer base. So these names might not mean a huge amount to many people on this call, but all of Southern Company, which is Mississippi Power, Georgia Power, Alabama Power, all of Exelon Group, which includes ComEd and Petco, Florida Power and Light, Duke Energy, they're all long-established customers using our structural analysis software. This recent deal was the first example of us cross-selling and upselling the IKE platform into an existing PoleForeman customer, because of the way we can integrate those two capabilities. So it was, I think, a really interesting initial cross-sell win, and we're hoping has the ability for us to do a lot more at this specific utility. But they're also part of a broader group. It's a Fortune 100 investor-owned utility group. There's only a couple of those that we're not able to name them just yet, but they, with successful delivery, we think we've got a really interesting opportunity to go across the whole holding company.
Sounds very interesting. We might leave it there for today so people can follow along with that one and find out what you're announcing next on that particular deal.
Great.
Thanks so much for joining us, Glenn, from Wellington.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everyone.